President Obama, who received nearly 80% of the Jewish vote in 2008, has revealed himself to be one of the most anti-Israel presidents in American history. So will traditionally Democratic Jewish voters migrate to the GOP and pull the lever for the Republican candidate in the 2012 presidential election? Roger L. Simon, CEO of PJTV, was at the Republican Jewish Coalition Summer Bash at the Beverly Hilton in Los Angeles, where he asked pundits, politicians, and RJC members if the tide is shifting.
As a Jewish Republican, do you see a change in your friends and relations moving toward the right?
I think even amongst the Democratic Jewish community, leaning more towards support of the Israeli situation and Netanyahu.
Traditionally, the Jews have not been Republican. However, it's changing.
I think it's changing, but it's changing slowly. They don't quite recognize yet the threat that President Obama faces and provides for Israel.
Jews are nervous about the road that Obama's taking in the Middle East, the pressure he's putting on Israel as opposed to the Palestinians, and I think that's obviously a strong issue for most Jews. And we're moving now towards the Republican Party because they most represent our feelings.
Obama's positions on Israel are overwhelmingly opposed by the Jewish community. They don't see why Israel should be prejudged. However, the vote is so Democrat that I find it hard to see a Republican will get more than a third of the Jewish vote. However, going from 22% to 33% can make a difference in Ohio, it can make a difference in Florida, it can make a difference in Nevada. 3 states are in play based on the Jewish vote, but it is still going to be so hard to move them across the finish line.
We have seen a clear, unmistakable trend in which the share of the Jewish vote has been increasing for the Republicans. If you go back to 1992, which was the low point for Republicans, we were getting 11% of the Jewish vote. In 1996, we got 16% of the Jewish vote. In 2000, we got 19% of the Jewish vote. George Bush in 2004 got 25% of the Jewish vote. We obviously lost a little bit in 2008, like Republicans did across the board, but we didn't lose that much. We went back down to 22%. And then in the midterm elections in 2010, we got historic levels of Jewish support.
As we've seen with Jimmy Carter, and now we're seeing with Barack Obama, a president cannot necessarily make Israel stronger, but a president can make Israel weaker.
The president has been hostile towards Israel, and people in Hollywood and in Beverly Hills recognize that. And although they're very wary of President Obama, they're also wary, I think a lot of them on the left, of trying to look like they're siding with the right, with Republicans.
Will the Jewish vote ever change, and has the last year or the last few months meant anything?
No.
Certainly there's a shift to the right, not only recently with Obama's statement at the State Department about 67 borders, but even before that.
You're not Jewish, but you've been to this event before, I believe.
I haven't been to this event before, no.
But, do you think that there's a movement in the Jewish vote toward conservatism? I know you're friends with Eric Cantor and all that, but in the larger sense.
No, if you go on about, there is, and there's a fundamental reason why. Because when you look at what is transpiring, one, in America, but two, Israel is the closest friend to America. And when one party treats the friend not like a friend, I think people wake up.
I really think that people, when they graduate from university, they get sort of, the education system there is, sort of teaches these kids something, the liberal philosophy on a lot of issues. And as they get out, they get their first paycheck, they realize the government takes a lot of that away. They sort of come to the right, I essentially believe.
Look, I had an interesting experience in my Reform temple growing up, and it's why my dad pulled me by the ear and took us out of University Synagogue over there on Sunset. It was when, after Jaime Town, Rabbi Freeling, a flaming liberal, came not just to Jesse Jackson's defense, but was a huge supporter of his. And so when somebody calls, New York Jaime Town, and a rabbi comes to his defense, you're talking about a self-defeating mindset.
What do you think this is, DNA, or what's the real?
I think Jews are just born with it, and that there's a new generation that doesn't. I wish I had a joke for it, but it's so pathetic now that I can't joke about it anymore. It is, if you're Reform or Reconstructionist or just Jewish, you are just a Democrat. Jews only get either the Orthodox or the conservative vote. The more religious you are, the more likely you are to vote Republican. The less religious you are, the more likely you are to vote Democrat.
The values and things you believe in most, hard work, responsibility, support of Israel, are more represented these days by the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. And it's a slow move, but I think it's coming.
Some people have begun to see that what we have right now is not working for the Jews.
This is an opportunity to see a real change occur.
I think there's going to be an exodus of Jewish Democrats coming into the Republican camp. At least I hope.
There's going to be a new understanding in the next campaign and next election where people stand and where people vote.
We ask that question as we do every year. Will the Jews change their vote to the Republicans? We'll find out in 2012.